Greetings, fellow songwriters and seekers, and welcome back to Muse Measure. If you haven't done so yet, hit the guy on the lotus blossom down below so you can benefit from all that we're all learning here. So many great questions from viewers, which is expanding our sense of songwriting, what all these different aspects of it are and what they mean to us as creators, as human beings. So honing our craft and also honing our perception at the same time. So don't miss out on that. You should subscribe. So I have a question here from Campbell Coleman in Jacksonville, Florida. Campbell asks, I've been writing for years now and noticed lately that I seem to be repeating myself, almost like I'm rewriting the same few songs over and over again. What do you recommend I can do to try to break out of this cycle and find new material? Very, very good question. And this happens to all creative people, I think, that we tend to end up in a rut and just repeating the same things. This is just, not even creative people. This is every person who has certain habits that they do over and over and over again. Now, some of our habits are very, very good, that they keep us in good physical condition, they keep us healthy, they keep us going to work and making money and, being able to have a livelihood. But then, life can get kind of boring and dull once we just keep doing the same old routine over and over again. And this is also very true in the creative process, which we often look to give us some kind of new depth or spice to our lives, to give us new surprises. And I think it should be like that. And if it's not, then we need to intervene and do something to kind of spice things up again. So what I've done whenever I tend to repeat myself is that I kind of look towards copying again. And what do I mean by that? I mean, our first stages of being creative people is often we hear someone's music that we really love and admire, and we want to do what they do. I know for myself, when I was a teenager, it was first Elvis Presley that I definitely wanted to copy and emulate. And so I learned to sing like him. I tried to move like him. I learned a whole bunch of his songs. I wasn't really writing songs at that point, though. But what really inspired me to start writing songs was when I heard the Beatles, and I fell in love with their music, and I wanted to be like them. So I started writing songs like them. And so what's cool about the Beatles as a model is they start out one way as kind of a boy band that's doing straight ahead rock and roll. Even that is not true. If you listen to the early catalog, there's much more variety there. But let's just say that's the pigeonholing understanding of who they were. But, even if you think that about the early years, they changed so much over a matter of, if you take 1962 to 1970, that's only 8 years. And they go from the Mob Top Fab Four to being these kind of sullen, introspective, really deep thinkers about music, and are writing about all kinds of different subject matters and writing in all different types of genres. And also, even within the genre of rock and roll, doing all these innovative things and new things with it. So it's really cool to think about. And then, of course, Bob Dylan was a huge influence on me, trying to write songs like him lyrically. A lot of my songs around that time when I was obsessively listening to him, basically sound like somebody trying to imitate Bob Dylan and never quite making it. But all this was very, very useful. And I think this is a good thing to do whenever we find ourselves in a rut, is to find somebody else's music that we really, really admire, learn a few of their songs, learn the ones that we really, really like, and even try to do maybe an imitation. So in poetry, I often give my students this imitation exercise where they take a poem and then they analyze it for its parts of speech. So like noun, adverb, verb, all the different parts of speech that a word can be. And then their imitation follows that exactly. So say this Gertrude Stein poem uses a noun, then a verb, then an adverb, and an adjective. Well, you're not just copying, the sense of what they're trying to do in that line, but you're also copying actually the parts of speech. So it's a really kind of one-to-one, word-for-word copy, and also trying to do something similar to what they're doing in the imagery. So that's a cool exercise to do, a writing exercise. It's good to start with something small, so maybe a short song. You don't want to do something that's like a 14-minute long song, but something that maybe has 2 verses and a chorus, and you could do that. Or even just rewriting one verse. I remember I did this with Desolation Row, which is really long. When I was a teenager, I wrote the line instead of Desolation Row was, "And my son has got his toes." Now, that's not something that I want to play for anybody, but I went and rewrote all the verses of Desolation Row with my own wacky imagery and, copying kind of Dylanisms where you have these characters that come up and then they're doing all these strange things, but they're little vignettes of these people in this world on Desolation Row. So I did that with that. So that's what I recommend to try to get yourself out of a rut as far as what you're listening to, what you're playing. It's always good to learn to play new songs when this is happening because it's going to expose you to new chords that you don't normally use, hopefully. It's going to expose you to new subject matters, probably new parts of your voice, of your range, that you don't normally use. This is the other thing about getting stuck in a rut. We are kind of limited by what we can do on our instrument and with our voice as far as melody and chords. So always learning new chords, whatever instrument you're playing, trying to get better at that instrument. So you don't have to spend 8 hours a day and become a jazz musician, but are you spending 5 to 10 minutes a day just learning a new scale or learning some new chords, maybe some jazz chords or, some open tuning? There's all kinds of incredible open tuning songs. So Joni Mitchell or I don't know, I'm drawing a blank on anyone else, but there's tons out there. So learning to play in that. So just all these different other approaches that other artists have taken that you can then adopt and get better. With your voice, are you expanding the range of your voice? I used to not be able to sing much higher than this. That was about as high as the top of my range. And then because I did daily vocal exercises, I was able to get much, much higher. And so, that's a great way to expand out of what you're normally doing. If you listen to my first Visit record, it's all in the lower range. And even the second Visit record, it's all pretty low range. And then by the third and fourth, you can hear that I'm starting to get higher and higher. And that expands what I can do with my voice, what I can express emotionally, what I can write melodically. And it also affects the chords you choose as well. Because, when you're going to all these other high places, it's those basic 3 chords that I've been using all along, they're not quite enough to match the shape and contour of where my song's going. I need more variety. So that is really good for getting out of a rut as far as expanding your abilities as a musician, expanding your abilities as a singer. And, if all else fails, there's Brian Eno's oblique strategies that are these just cards that he made, but there's an app that you can download. I'll put a link to it down below, where it just whenever you get into a little rut and you just I'm just repeating myself, it gives pieces of advice, this little thing. Sometimes they just what does that have to do? It's like a magic 8-ball in some ways. Sometimes it fits what you want to think about, and other times you're well, how does that make sense with what I'm doing right now? And sometimes it won't, but at least gets you thinking, and it makes you thinking about things in a different way. Lastly, what I'll say is to pick different subject matter. So you can even use AI for this. You can just say, tell AI to give you a songwriting prompt about something that isn't about, and then list the things that you normally write about, and see what it comes up with. Opening up a book off your shelf, a book you haven't read, and just picking a random line from that book that pops out at you. That's your first line of your song, and then write from that. And then the other thing is improving, just seeing what comes off the cuff. Now, oftentimes we just do what's safe and we stick with repeating our same old in improvisation, but at least you'll be able to hear what that is a little bit more glaringly. And so you'll know, okay, well, this is what I normally do. So what is outside of that? And how can I expand out of that? Now, we're not trying to completely rewrite our life stories or reframe our whole approach to songwriting. We're just expanding it a little bit and not, completely radically diverging from what we already do. Because probably what you're doing works in some ways, but you just want to maybe add, let's say I'm going to add this new chord. And I know the Beatles did this whenever they learned like a new chord, they were like really excited to use it in a song. So give that a try. Whatever, whatever new little spice you can add to it, a new little perspective you can add to it. Also, speaking of song subjects, look at, all the different ways that the Beatles expanded. The early stuff is just all about love and relationships. But then when you get to Sgt. Pepper's, like, I'm Fixing a Hole, or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or I'm the, not the same album, but I'm the Walrus, all this stuff, So you can write songs about anything. And I know when I've heard people compare Pet Sounds with Sgt. Pepper, and they argue about which one's better, which I think is a ridiculous debate to even have, because they're both absolutely brilliant. But, that's one kind of tick that they put against the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson, is that all the songs on Pet Sounds are most of them are about love, whereas the Beatles have all these different range of topics to their songs, so they're more complex in their songwriting. So for what that's worth, I think that also is a good insight into this. So expand your topics of songs. You could come up with a list of topics of songs. You can just pick random books off the shelf. Expand your ability as a musician so that your voice can go higher or lower, and you also learn how to play new chords and learn different parts of your instrument. So all these things will help expand you out of your rut and make it a goal. Like, okay, next song I'm gonna write, I'm gonna add a chord that I don't normally use, or that I've just learned, or I'm gonna try to sing slightly higher than I normally do in my songs, or lower. That could be the opposite. Maybe you have a very high voice. All right, well, thank you so much, Campbell, for that excellent question, and it really is food for thought. Let me know how it goes in the comments section. If you come up with any interesting strategies for breaking out of the same, cycle of repeating yourself. And best of luck with your songwriting and your spiritual practice. All right, take care.